everybody. Thank you all for joining us. We live in Seattle, so the traffic is absolutely crazy. So thank you for bearing with us and tuning in a little bit later. For those of you that don't know, my name is Lindsay Kuyama. I'm the founder of Ray Theater, which is a theater education and consulting company whose goal is to inspire educators, young artists, and communities to deeply engage with difficult storytelling that goes beyond the black and white so that we're able to be transformed by the gray areas that exist within these stories. We come live every month to give free content to educators. We know how busy your lives are and how many things are changing in the world. So we want to just come to you once a month to talk about topics that are of interest, especially in theater education. And yeah, that's what we're doing right now. So this month, I'm joined by Donte Felder.
Hi.
Who is an amazing Seattle teacher, and I'm so excited because we are going to be talking about student-devised work and the importance of empowering student voice. But before we get into all that, a couple logistics. If you're watching live, go ahead. You can comment as we're going. If you have questions or anything like that. If you are watching this in repeat, you can also comment. If we're saying things that you're like, oh my gosh, yes, that's me as a teacher, or oh, I love this, go ahead, give us some likes, hearts. We just like to know you're there. And yeah, if you are watching in replay, we will answer your questions if you have them. Just give us a little bit of time. So great. So before we jump into the subject, Donte, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yes, my name is Donte Michael Tyrone Felder. I am an educator, a screenwriter, a playwright, a filmmaker, and a producer, and also on the board of the Seattle the Seattle Repertory Theater. Also, I'm with the on the board of the Hugo House as well as Arts Corps. So I love being. I'm an artist. I guess to sum it up, I am a storyteller.
Awesome. And you teach what grade levels? I
am the head teacher at Orca K-8, and so I see the kindergarten students all the way up to 8th grade. But when I am in the classroom, I'm with the middle school students, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
Awesome. Great. And so for those of you that are not necessarily from Seattle, all of the things that Donte just rattled off are amazing, awesome organizations. If you are looking to see like what community engagement could look like, I would totally look into those. So go back and rewind to that. So Donte, how did you get into education?
That's a great question. So my father was a principal for years, 30 years, and I had an opportunity to follow his lead. And he used storytelling as a mechanism to inspire those students who are struggling or on the fringe.
Okay.
Yep.
And so then did you originally go to school to be an educator, or did you go to school for the art side?
So I love the arts from 5th grade on, and I wanted to always dabble and be one of those sexy actors. But I didn't, I was scared to, especially with being African-American males. You don't necessarily move into the field of education and the arts, or the arts. And so my father kept saying I would make a great teacher. And so I went to Grambling State University, and my major was education. And then I said there was something missing. So for years after I was teaching, I said there's something missing. I want to explore the arts again. So I went back to school to get my master's in creative writing, focused on screenplay at Goddard College.
Oh, great. And so then, so now you kind of do all of these things.
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
That's amazing. And so I guess I'm just interested in the journey that you took to get into student-devised work or empowering student voices, because I think as educators, a lot of us just stick to work that has already been created by other people, especially shows that like have been tested on Broadway and that audiences we know they're going to love. So devising work is kind of a crazy idea. So how did you get to that idea?
So actually, it's interesting. The 5th grade, I was in special education from 2nd grade all the way up into my 8th grade year. And so while in my 5th grade, I went to the progressive education school, University Heights, which was amazing. And my teacher challenged me to create and tell stories. And so I fell into, they had this awesome, amazing playwright contest. And if you won, your play would be produced.
Okay.
And so I had this crush on this girl who loved plays. And so I said, all right, let me do this. And I wrote the play. It won the contest. And from that point, I just fell in love with storytelling. And I began to learn that education doesn't necessarily have to be one-dimensional, but you can learn through play. And so I wrote plays so I can play while we're learning. And so it was just an amazing experience, and that was a life-changing experience. Yeah, and so now, is that predominantly what you do with young people, is helping them create their own work? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So example, we were granted $25,000 to create a production. And so the students wrote the production of Defiance, and the students created a graphic novel that complemented the play Defiance. So my job and role was to really give them the tools and strategies in order to come up with the best story that they can come up with for their community. And the students ran with it. And so they understood that this is a business that, you know, with $25,000 is nothing to sneeze at, but they had to work and complete this as a group. Yeah. And so what would you say, because I mean, I definitely want to get into the how do we do this as educators? Because that's it's like easy to be like, yeah, I totally want to empower student voice and like make shows, but then when you actually get to it, it's like, this is crazy. So I guess just to lead into that, what are some of the, like, what have you seen that's so impactful of having students do this type of work? Really, it comes down to student voice and honoring their voice and honoring their stories. And so sometimes just saying, we don't need a large stage to produce our work. We can do that on the corner. We can do that in the classroom. We could do it for our peers, or down for the 8th graders. We can create plays for our 1st and 2nd graders. So really, it's almost like with sports and the basketball. You can play basketball anywhere pretty much. Right. So I just think so it's just coming down to, what do they want to do? What stories do they want to share? What stories are inspiring, and what resonates with them at this moment in time? And so really asking the students, what do you want to do? That's the first step. Then the second step is to maybe bring in people, or if you don't have the resource to bring in people, maybe they have them all over YouTube of how to write a play, those master classes for $49.99 or whatever the price is. But using the theater and saying, okay, we have the story, now let's format that. Let's format it so it can look professional. And then from there, once they learn how the strategies and the scaffolding of this is the thesis to all the way to the production of the play, then they can say they own it. But really, it's about students owning their work and teachers being the mentor and guiding them in order to bring the best out of them. And so when students own the work, how does that look different than, say, if they were producing something that's like always done, or done that's like already created by somebody else? Is there a difference? Well, yeah, I think that what I've noticed is that when I've said from the first years of my education or arts or playwriting, it was always Donte heavy. And so Donte gave, this is what you're going to do, you're going to recite the lines, and that was fine, it was great, it was a learning process for me. But when the students were at the forefront and said, Donte, I really have this idea to talk about the arts and how the arts are being just beat up, taken away, stripped away from our community, I want to tell our story about it. And so once that happened, I said, how are you going to do it? So the students came around and they circled around the campfire, and they said, "This is what we want to do. This is our theme. This is our thesis statement. We want to go out to the community and say we need our arts. We value the arts." And so that's where the Defiance came from. But it comes down from just, again, giving the students the tools the tools and the toolkit in order to create these stories. Especially now. Yeah. And so do you think, so I've heard from teachers a lot that they get scared when they ask students, like, what do you want to talk about? That it'll get kind of out of control. Is there things that we can do as educators to kind of keep things in the balance, or are we just being overly paranoid about those things? Both. So I think, great. So the thing with students creating and empowered to create their own content is that there are times where it's going to be messy. And so sometimes you are going to say, this is going to be an uncontrolled, messy day where we just throw ideas on the wall. And that's fine, and that's cool. Then there's other times where it's discipline. So we're going to say, we're going to honor each other's voice, and we're going to put all our ideas on the wall. And then from there, we'll start to break it down and do analysis and synthesize the work and build whatever that play or production is going to be. So I think that if you call it out and say, this is a messy thing, and understand, and the teachers going into the classroom that I have no control. I'm giving up. I'm capitulating all power right now. Right. That's going to be on them. It's your job.
Yeah.
Then there's the days where, okay, the teacher's stepping up and saying, this is how it's going to be, the structure, because the students also need to see that as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so we've kind of been talking about different ideas of tools and ways to do this. So can we kind of dive into, I'd love to just start without going into tools or tips of how to do it. What does the process look like? Just if we zoom out, how does that look like getting put together? That's
a great question. So the first thing that, again, you start off with, what is the story? What's the story? What's the genre? What's the theme? Who are the characters? So really doing it, breaking down that this may take a 2-week, 3-week process in order to just get the characters, character analysis, the theme, doing research, because research is also a part of the process as well. So maybe let me back up.
All right.
So if you're going to do a play based on nonfiction, there's going to be research that's involved. So students getting and saying that we are going to create this play, but we need to do research. So that may be a 1 or 2 week process of just getting who the players are. What was the story about? Why was this happening? So getting the understanding of that, the concepts, and then moving into how are we going to either keep it to the truth, or how are we going to fictionalize this work? So some people may want to create an allegory and say, can I use this moment in World War II to create zombies?
Yeah,
absolutely. Let's do it. That's fine, but just understanding that that they have to get that content base first, then they can move out into that fictional space where they can create their characters.
Okay.
So the second step is really fleshing out who those characters are. And there's great resources out there that will show you how to create characters, maybe have students draw what they are and then put their external attributes and internal attributes, all the nuts and bolts of it. That's another, but spending time on the research, developing the character, and then doing a story outline, story beat of what the play is going to be about. That's in a nutshell the beginning stages of. And there are times again where we're focused and that this is the strategies, these are, and then other times here's what we're going to talk about. Here's the outline. You have 2 weeks to get it done.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I love this. And so then how long, I guess on average, would you say this process takes to get from research to even to being on stage? Is there an average, or can it be kind of all over the place?
Depends on. So here's what I would, because I have 3 productions happening next year.
All right.
And so I'm working with elementary students, and with elementary students, that's going to take. I already have in my mind that's going to be a 2-month process.
Okay.
So I'm going to dedicate too much for them because I'm showing them the nuts and bolts of acting, of how to write the story, of how to build and create your own costumes, what the lights look like. So that's going to be a longer process, and that's okay. So in my mind, this is what it's going to look like. With the middle school students who have those skill sets, it's going to be a little faster. So it might be 3 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on the scope of the work. So if you just have a few costumes, or if you want to just tell a story with 2 characters, and it could be, we're going to talk about police brutality, and we're going to talk about Trayvon Martin. And so that way we have our 2 characters, we have an alley, and we're going to make sure that we're going to create complex characters without judgment. Go.
All right.
So that could take 5 days to do.
Yeah.
But it really depends on the scope of work. So if you're just starting out, what my advice is to do something small in scale.
Okay.
And if you have the tools and resources and the people and already built-in system, then I would plan out for a month to work on a major production. And that includes advertising and everything else.
We can definitely talk about the end. That's everybody's like, well, who will come see my show and how will I make money?
Yeah.
Well, it can happen.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. So I mean, that's one thing so Donte and I worked together, and then I left that job.
Yep.
We were together for a little bit. I know, it's so sad. But that was the one thing that totally blew my mind, was how efficient this process can be. It does not need to take 8 months.
No.
And you can put on amazing quality productions in a short period of time that really honor your students' voice. So now let's talk a little bit about how to do this. So you had mentioned like there's all kinds of things on YouTube that exist. Just as a plug for Re-Theater, we also do this work. So I'm a dramaturg and I help schools like figure out how to infuse education and history into their productions. So that's something that we actually will help support you with at Re-Theater. But Donte, I'm sure you know 5,000 million other things, that tools and toolkits that people can use.
Yes. So let's
talk about it.
Yeah. So there are, of course, the YouTube and the master classes, but also it's just a matter of, I don't have a budget. Where are we going to? So I've worked with the whole this theater. Sometimes we get shortchanged.
Oh gosh, yeah, right.
So exactly. You have to creative ways to find costumes. So there's thrift stores that you can hit up. There are times if you need to write the play. I'll get you some pencils.
All right, yeah, right.
I guarantee I will get you pencils and a paper. And
we don't need computers. We don't need time. We don't need things.
No, sometimes it's just going on the cheap, and that for $200 you can actually do a production. And again, if you're doing with 2 students, 3 students, 5 students, then you can still do a production with $200, $300. And also you're forgetting one of your major resources are the students. They have time and talents.
Yes.
So they can give up their time and they definitely have talent. So some of those students, especially in my work, they are getting the costumes. That's their job. So they're actually making costumes, or they design Karaoke Kevin. Hey, this is a shirt that the students designed when they were sixth grade. So awesome. I just think that one, you ask the parents in your community, we need this amount of time. So can everyone on board donate 5 hours or 10 hours or 1 hour to contribute to the production?
Yeah.
Then the next step is, okay, students, what are your talents?
Yes.
So is anyone interested in teaching or directing or doing the lights? So that way we don't have to pay $2,000.
Yes.
So that's the first, is really finding out who's in the building and resources do you already have.
Okay.
Once you've established that, then you need to start budgeting yourself of how much is this production going to cost. And then if it's $200, $500, then that's, you have that in your head. And then the next piece is, which kind of ties into advertising, let's talk about the ticket sales. So if we know that it costs $500, are we trying to raise $1,000 to offset the cost plus to put money in the bank for our next production?
Okay.
So it sounds complicated, but it's super easy. You just need to slow down and find who's in your building, because you have teachers who are willing to sacrifice their time and really want to say, hey, I can help contribute.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know, we didn't talk about this question ahead of time, but as you were talking about that, I was wondering if you've seen when students are creating their own work, do you see more buy-in from parents or other teachers or community members than when it's just like, we're gonna do Annie for the 12th time?
Yeah. So hey, Annie was one of my
Hey, I love Annie. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to go see it this winter. I love it.
Yes.
But you know what I mean?
Yes. I love me some Annie. So we do, example, we're doing Ghostbusters for the younger students.
Awesome. So
with the Ghostbusters, the students, actually back in the day, like 2 years ago, the students wrote the script, so we're just bringing that script out.
Awesome.
So the parents on that are creating the sets and the costumes and everything else. So I guess, what was your question?
Yeah, so like, do you get more buy-in, do you feel like, from the community and other
absolutely.
educators?
So, and that's where I was going.
Okay.
So once that's understood that this is not Donte's production, this is not the school's production, that this is your production, and they're the producers. That's how I treat them. That's how we have those discussion that you're responsible for this show. You were the stewards of this show. So from that point, once they have that, they get on each other, not in a negative way, but just more of like to say, you know what, this is our show. We have to be professional. So they set their own standards. Yeah. And their own expectations and their own rules. And so my job is to facilitate and to coach when I need to. Okay. And
do you feel like with this model that it takes less off of you?
Yes.
Okay, you can see where I was going with
yes, absolutely. So I think that the first year, that was some work. the first year, because I was trying to figure it out, and that was, everything was just disorganized, and there was just one person trying to figure out, how do I do advertising? How do I do this?
Yeah.
But right now, it's just, you step in, and now I have another set of a cohort that's, their siblings were already in it. So their siblings are coming back to help out.
That's so cool.
So it's just like it functions on its. So all I'm doing is really, here's the idea. Here's the Ghostbusters. Let me pitch this to the community. Okay, yay, we're going to do Ghostbusters. Then there's times where the students will say, I want to do this.
Okay.
This show. And then they write their own material, and then they go. But it's just a matter of, it's powerful to see when a community comes together as a group, and to say that we want to do this because we believe in the art. Because it's not just about theater and for the lines. It's about, again, going deeper about what does this story really represent.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of teaching moments, and we slow down and say, okay, we're going to talk about defiance. So defiance is, again, talking about how the arts are stripped from society and desensitizing humans into just basically robots. And so we ask, how does this play out in history?
Yeah.
How does this represent in your life? Do you have arts in your community? Is there a difference between the arts in the African American community and those who are living in this area?
Totally.
So we just really using those teaching moments all the time when we can.
Awesome. And so you actually take time in rehearsal
every day.
You guys have like discussions, like you sit in a circle and talk about the world or what we're working on in this production.
Every day.
Awesome. And has that always been how you've approached work, or is that a shift that also happened when
it was a shift? It was a shift because initially, as stated earlier, that it was like Donte is the director, and we just need to get through the lines. And so what I began to realize is that storytelling is the purpose of storytelling is about survival. And so when people understand that we're not just approaching a story as entertainment, that's part of it, but also creating and teaching lessons, then there's those epiphanies that happen of, I understand why this character is doing this, and this is teaching me this. So I just think of that understanding, like every story has those teaching and teachable moments that we can use with characters and plot. And so I just think understanding that theater is not playtime. There's play in it, but there's a discipline, and also storytelling is the paramount objective for me to why I do this.
I love that, and I feel too. I mean, that kind of all ties back to something that you had said earlier about the idea of theater kind of being like basketball, where you can really do it anywhere.
Yep.
The storytelling really, really is what is important, and it doesn't have to be on a big stage with a ton of lights and costumes and everything perfect.
Yep.
It's really about the stories.
Yep.
I was wondering, we have somebody that said something. So Autumn is watching and said, that's awesome. What a well-rounded program. So yay to you. Sorry, I'm like, we're also filming on Instagram, which is why my face is like in the middle of things. I apologize to everybody if you saw my nose. But yeah, I mean, Autumn, like his program is amazing. So take everything from it and learn. So is there any, we've talked a little bit about Defiance. Like, I'd love to have you back on, just like talk through Defiance and the work that you've done, because, oh my gosh, guys, it is truly unbelievable work. We don't have time for that today. Is there any, before we kind of wrap up, any moments that stand out to you of why this work is important?
The biggest I take away from this work is where students, I alluded to it, but when students who were in the program 4 years ago, 5 years ago, are coming back and giving up their time to teach the other students. So that's just like the biggest giveaway, because it's almost like this reciprocal, we're stakeholders when we graduate, so we're just not abandoning the program, but we're coming back to teach others.
That's
so
huge.
That's the biggest moment of my life. When we did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and to see last year at Franklin High School, it was powerful just to see who was backstage. So the people who were backstage we had about 10 parents backstage. Okay. And we had about 8 students from beyond. Then we had this whole Franklin crew come out. There was about 7 students who gave up their time to say, we really want to help. So we had 15 students who said, we are going to support this program, which was powerful. Yeah. So just stepping away from that. Also, for another takeaway from the theater is students learning like the monomyth, the structure of story, and they can begin to apply that to their essays, to their nonfiction and fictional writing, just to their own personal lives, And so they comment on, you know, I can understand what you were saying when arts are getting their ass kicked by the Seattle Public Schools. No, I'm not calling any school districts out. I'm not calling any school districts.
Just saying things.
just saying, thinking out loud.
Yeah.
But understanding that and seeing that,
yeah,
and for them to be able to articulate that is extremely powerful. The second thing is just to see the program itself by just risking and taking chances, and to understand that failure will happen. Just think about the first 2 years are going to be an absolute failure.
Okay.
If you're just establishing your,
all right,
that
it's gonna be a failure for the first 2 years. Got it.
That is okay. You need to fail.
Okay.
You need to fail in order to be great. And so I think that understanding that the first year we're just going to do a small production, and the acting is going to be bad, and the music's going to be all over the place, and it's okay, and it's necessary to do. And I just think you just have to. At Goddard, there was a saying: trust the process. So just go out there and understand the first 2 years are going to be failure. The next 2 years, years 3 and 4. We're moving forward to creating a dynamic program. We're not going to be there yet, but once we get to year 5 and 6 is going to be a badass program. That's going to be amazing. So just understanding that you have to trust the process. Build your community. If you have a community, like parents who are interested in writing grants, have them write grants. If you have students who are interested in doing fundraising, have them do it. And I think also here's my also note. That teach students, if you're going to write grants, have them learn it as well.
Yes.
So that way they can understand the process in order to raise money. So also, speaking of money, with the $25,000 grant, we have students control, like understanding that this is the budget. If we lose this, they were understanding the entire process. But again, I had to give up my power in order to make that happen.
And is that where you saw that shift of like the 2 years of like rebuilding? Like it wasn't perfect, it was messy, it had to fail, as you said, to get to years 4, 5, and 6 where things are really starting to go.
Yep, and also bring in people. You have somebody who can come in and support your program. So you also have community members and reaching out to your local theater. Hey, we're really inspired to do this. So can you come in and give up 10 hours of your year to help support this? They will say yes. So like Seattle Rep, if you're listening, yes, get into the South End, into Mon Theater, get into the South End.
Yes.
But really it's your local theaters are also, they have an investment as well. Because if your group is doing theater and parents are going to the theater, then that's a group of people who can come to their theater and support their work. So it's all just this big relation, the circle of life.
Yeah. No, I believe that's so true. And really, I mean, yeah, I think if you are encountering people who will not come into your program, because I've seen that people will not help you, don't be discouraged.
Nope.
Because people are out in your community that want to help you.
Yep.
It might take a little bit of time and finagling to find them, but you don't want that negativity in your program anyway. So if people don't want to give you the time and help you, then okay, cool. Let's go do something else with somebody, and you'll find the right people.
You'll find the people. They are out there.
Yeah. This is awesome, Donte. I mean, I could keep talking to you forever and ever about this topic. But before we officially end this all up, is there any last words of wisdom that you have for educators going into the school year? It could be related to devising or just being in the world as a teacher again.
Yep. So my biggest thing is thinking out loud. So sometimes we approach education in a myopic, one-dimensional way, where we just hand the students a book, and the students finish, they fill in the bubbles, and then they move on. But if you want to make it come alive, where it's 4D and they're using their senses and they're exploring, they're learning hands-on, and when it becomes palpable, I think that using theater is a great way to activate students who are not interested or invested in World War II or the Civil War. How can you make it extremely engaging for your audience? And so sometimes theater tricks the students into learning. So one example I gave, just thinking about Karate Kid. So Karate Kid is an example where Daniel LaRusso he wanted to learn how to do karate.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Miyagi said, go ahead and paint the fence. And so Mr. Miyagi, Daniel was painting the fence, and then go ahead and wash the car. And so Daniel LaRusso didn't understand that he was learning karate. Until that big epiphany where he said, I hate this, I'm not learning anything. And Mr. Miyagi said, let's slow down and let's show you what you've learned. And so wax on became a karate move. Paint the fence became a karate move. That's what theater can do.
Yeah.
It can trick students into learning about history and learning about themselves and learning about their world and getting a complex understanding of characters, because like I mentioned, Trayvon Martin and just looking at how I approached when we did a little skit on that, that all parties in there are human beings. So we used this concept of erotic ironing from Joseph Campbell, and we looked at how can we really explore how Trayvon Martin we're not putting him as a protagonist, we're putting him as a man, a young man. And we're going to Darren Wilson, what's his name? The one who shot him.
Nope. It's not.
Yeah, it'll come back while I'm driving home.
Yep.
But Miss Zimmerman, George Zimmerman. Yeah. So looking at George Zimmerman as a human being, not necessarily as an antagonist. What he did was awful. The act was awful, but looking at him as a complex person, so we can get a deeper understanding and more maybe bridge those gaps and understand empathy with these characters.
Yes.
So I think that's what theater can do, rather than saying this person was bad, this person. We understand that the act was vicious and awful, but let's go deeper and beyond and look beyond that.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is like the whole reason I teach theater. So like hearing somebody else be like, this is how it's important, then I'm like, oh, I'm not crazy.
Yes.
Like there is that. I mean, bringing people together through empathy and showing that there is no good or bad, like infallible. Like everybody, it's very complex, and that's how the world is. And if we don't teach our young people to see the world as complex, then we continue to divide and stay in these silos that they try to put us in. And
that's what theater does. It allows them to practice that.
Yes.
It like we're going to explicitly teach you this through this model. So get up and stand up and touch the person and hug the person and laugh at the person and cry and be mad at, and then here's ways that we can, bridge that gap.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love this. This is like a perfect way to end.
Yes.
So if you, thank you for joining and watching. And if you are watching in this room replay, we would love to hear your thoughts on what you think as an educator you can take from this back into your classroom. But I just want to thank you, Donte, again for coming and sharing your amazing wisdom. If people want to find out more about you and your work, is there a way that they can do that?
Yep. So if you want to contact me, you can contact blackjedi123@gmail.com.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. Yes, amazing.
Yeah. So, and also we're going to do, contact me about anything. If you want to learn more about Star Wars or sci-fi or nerd stuff, I got you.
I love it. Awesome. And so is there, do you have any upcoming work that you want to plug?
Yes. So my own personal work, I'm working on a film. And I just finished the script. It is actually going to go into production in the next couple months. Amazing. So, which is a lot of work, but it is amazing. I'm also working on a great production called Blurred's Comics and Cafe. That's my own personal work again, and that touches on shootings in the neighborhood through the eyes of Blurred's Black Nerds. And then also with the students, we're doing Ghostbusters this year for Orca Drama, and then also we're working on amazing productions with Intimon Theater. Awesome. Yeah. With Starfish, is that with Starfish, absolutely. Continuing, I can't wait. So we will plug all of this stuff through our Facebook. If you are in the Seattle area, you should definitely go check this stuff out. If you're not in the Seattle area, because I know a lot of you are not, that's fine. Go read about it and be inspired and be awesome and bring these ideas back to your community. Everything is awesome. Yeah. Yes. Awesome. Okay, cool. Great. So just as far as upcoming things with Read Theater before we go, we are going to be launching an amazing, I'm biased because I made it, but what I think will be an amazing fall lineup for educators to continue to do online learning no matter where you are at. That's all going to be announced. I'm going to announce the date that it'll be announced tomorrow. We're going to have giveaways. We'll give out free educator passes and all of that.
And that's going to be coming in the next 2 weeks. And then our fall classes launch in September, which is crazy if you're a young person watching. We also are launching our private lessons again in the fall. So if you want to like work on writing awesome material or getting ready for auditions or playwriting and play reading, great. There you go. You can find out more information. So lots more information to come, but thank you again, Donte, for joining us. Hopefully we can have you back to talk about more cool stuff.
Yes.
This is amazing. Great. So thank you all for joining, and we will see y'all soon. Bye.
Peace.
All right, I gotta figure out I'm awful at this. So sorry everybody for watching me end this video and live video.